Rob Henderson 是剑桥大学心理学博士，但他因为反对美国校园与世俗脱节的奢华思想，拒绝成为顶级学府的教授。Rob 是一个孤苦无依的孤儿，母亲是一个因为吸毒被遣返的韩国人，父不详。只因为出生在美国，所以有美国籍。从小经历过 n 个寄宿家庭，孤苦无依，从来无法好好学习。直到17岁加入美国空军后，人生才有所好转。为了让你不用把 Rob 的人生经历阅览一遍， Life Kaizen 将为大家把英语圈的生活改善心智定期以超浓缩加划重点的形式制作成影片，供各位朋友参考及分享。您的支持是我持续做这个节目的动力。喜欢的话，请务必订阅、点赞、按小铃铛哦。
So your background, the life that you went through, to where you ended up, Air Force?
Yeah, Air Force.
Air Force, US Air Force, GI Bill, Yale, Cambridge, PhD, book, you know, going to be an amazing selling book, all the rest of the stuff. What do you attribute that trajectory to, given that you're friends with so many of the people that you grew up with that are still, they're that guy with 3 baby mamas and a bunch of alimony or whatever, and they're in the same town, in the same whatever. What do you attribute the change in you to that the other people didn't?
I mean, there are probably, there's a variety of factors. I think one is, you do need to have like a certain amount of like innate drive or ambition in the first place. And that I'm not entirely sure you can drill that into people. So you have to have that sort of raw material in the first place. But one point that I try to make in the book is that things could have very easily gone a different direction. I think having sort of aptitude and drive and ambition, those are necessary but not sufficient. That there are a lot of guys, I think, who are sort of smart and talented and ambitious, but they're just surrounded by chaos and disorder and, lack opportunity, or they've just been sort of beaten down by life so much that they don't even think to like spot the opportunities that are around you, and capitalize on them. And so that was there. So I think some of the raw material was probably there. And then the other thing was just making this, kind of halfway impulsive decision when I was 17 to just enlist and get out of my hometown. And I kind of knew that point, I'd had 2 jobs when I was in high school. I was a dishwasher at a restaurant, and then I was a bag boy at a grocery store. And I kind of looked around at my coworkers who were a little older than me. These were guys, this kind of guy in their early to mid 20s. Maybe they, like some of them, like they were like 24, but had a girlfriend in high school, and they were just like kind of creepy, weird stoner guy, or the guy who, would ride a dirt bike and, just like smoke a lot of weed in the parking lot and just, kind of aimless and adrift. And I thought like, I think now when you're 17 or 18, that's kind of cool to live that life. But when you're 24 or 28, like that's kind of pathetic. And even when I was a teenager, I had that thought that, sometimes my friends and I would ask these guys to like get us beer or hook us up with weed or whatever. And, some part of me, I was like happy they were doing it. But on the other hand, I was like, why are you doing this for us, man? Like what kind of loser is hanging out with a bunch of high schoolers? And I don't want to be like the weird old guy at the high school party when I'm that age. And so, a variety of factors led me to just enlist right away. I barely graduated high school. I mean, I was smart. And that's the other point that I try to make in the book is that a lot of people want to blame the school system or that there's something wrong with teachers or we aren't paying them enough. And maybe some of those things are true, but teachers aren't dumb. Like most teachers get into that profession because they care about kids and they want them to do well. And they're usually pretty observant about like which kids are sort of curious and academically inclined. And my teachers could see that in me, but I just had no motivation or desire to do well in school. It just wasn't there for me. And so my teachers were just, continually frustrated by me. And so, yeah, I enlist, I get out of there, basic training, I get stationed, I spend some time overseas and sort of have that structure around me. A couple of days ago, I spoke with a mutual friend of ours, Polina Pompliano, and she asked me this question of, when I read your book and I read about what you were like when you were a teenager, when you were in high school, and then I meet you now, like it just doesn't, like there's a disconnect. I don't understand it. And I explained that I was in the Air Force for 8 years. Like that's a long time. Like I was in from 17 to 25. And, in the book, I kind of like gloss over it because it's kind of mind numbing and boring, but it's like, make your bed, like make sure your uniform is, perfect. Especially for the first 6 months to a year when you're in training, it's like you're not a person. You're just like a cog in this machine of just like, like cleaning and being meticulous about every little aspect of your existence. And I hated it. I hated every second of it. But it was important for me to go through that, to like learn the skills that I kind of lacked when I was growing up, of just like, here's how to be an adult, here's how to take care of yourself, here's how to dress properly, and like even basic things, right?
What were the most surprising, I think this would be a nice framing actually, as you move up through the cacophosphere of different social strata, what were the most surprising realizations going from Rob 1.0 to Rob 2.0?
I mean, I think probably one of the bigger ones was it's like learning the distinction between like self-discipline and motivation, because I really lacked both when I was a teenager. I didn't feel motivated to do well, but I had no external discipline around me, really. I mean, I had it in sort of fits and starts in different periods. It was just a very sort of chaotic early life, but I had no self-discipline, certainly. Like I couldn't impose on myself. It just, I didn't have the tools to do that. But then in the military, I learned it that, at first it was imposed from on high that this is how you will do things. And then it gets drilled into you. And then you just learn on your own, like, oh, this is how you get things done. Is motivation is, so the distinction, the motivation is just a feeling. It's like, do I want to do this or not? And if I don't want to do it, I lack the motivation and I'm just not going to do it. Whereas self-discipline is, I'm going to do this regardless of how I feel. And so, for some people, it may make sense in the context of like going to the gym, that I don't feel like going to the gym today, but self-discipline is, it doesn't matter how you feel. Like, oh, you have a feeling, who cares? Like, what are your actions? What are you actually going to do now? Ignore those feelings and do what you set out to do. And so it was like that for my work, for things like, I mean, even showing up to work on time. It's kind of sad, but I was one of the better workers at my jobs in high school. And even then, I was like not on time half the time. Like it didn't matter. I didn't feel like it. And then the military was, if you don't show up to work on time, you get court-martialed and you go to military prison. Like that's the life. And once I learned like to operate by those standards and those regulations, those policies, that it dawned on me that actually, Jocko has this phrase, discipline equals freedom. That once you sort of outsource all of your decisions to this sort of regimented system, then suddenly like life gets better and you do have more freedom. You have the freedom to think about other things or to direct your attention to certain projects or goals or ideas. And you don't have to live your life in this constant state of chaos of, oh, I don't have any money. Now what? Like that. You just set the system so that your money goes here and this is what you're going to do and you go to work at this time and this is when you leave and this is and having that regimented system was really important for me. And now I just, I do it. It's second nature to me, but it took 8 years to get there. So yeah, I think those kinds of things. Discipline was the big one.